welcome to Every Single Guitars, where the goal of this channel is to review every single guitar ever made. I know I just told you guys that this is every single guitars, and it is true. My goal is to review every single guitar ever made. But if you think about it, an electric guitar needs a companion. It needs a quote unquote a sister or a brother, I guess. So I decided to switch it up a little bit and review a vintage Gibson amplifier that I just picked up. So today I got a vintage 1969 Gibson GA-5 WTR amplifier made in USA. So a little backstory on how I got this amp. I actually bought this off a antique store. It wasn't a guitar shop, it wasn't a music shop. It was just a shop where, you know, the owners had a bunch of old junk, I'd say. There was a lot of different stuff at the store. You know, there was old documents, there was an old Bible from the 1920s. So when I walked into the store, I saw this amp sitting in the corner of the room, just away from all the stuff that was displayed. And I asked him what this was, where he got this amp. And the owner told me that he bought it off a estate sale, surprisingly. So basically, that's where I got this amplifier, this Gibson amplifier. So for me, I'm not really too knowledgeable about amps. I have owned a couple amps in the past, but I'm not really the vintage amp, you know, seeker. For me, I'm all about vintage guitars, you know, electric guitars and acoustic guitars. Vintage amps, you know, I'm a little bit interested in, but not really. And mainly it's because it's just so big and it's so heavy to carry around. You know, if I had $3,000 to spend and invest on an instrument, I'd rather buy an electric guitar than a $3,000, you know, twin reverb amp from the 70s. It's just so big and it just takes up so much room. But surprisingly, the first thing that I noticed about this amp was how light it was. I mean, I could hold it with one thumb. It's extremely light. I mean, it's not like 1 pound light. It's not like 2 pounds. But dude, I'd say this is like 8 pounds, maybe 9, around that range. It's just very light for an amp. You know, usually amps are 20 pounds, 30 pounds. I think my Hot Rod Deluxe was like 50 plus pounds. I mean, that thing was heavy. This is super light. And I was curious why it was so light. So I actually took off the back. I took off the nails on the back and then I removed it. Probably take it off again and film a video, but inside it was just hollow. The material that they used for the wood, it's very cheap. It's not even wood. It's almost like cardboard. It's just not a good quality material that they use. It's not a durable wood, I'd say, that they used to build this amp. So that's why, you know, even though this is a 1969, over, you know, 50 years old, that's why, you know, you can see so much wear and just a lot of, it's just kind of flimsy in the back. Even this part, the cardboard has ripped a little bit. In terms of the settings of this amp, it's just a very simple amp, a very basic amp. There's only 4 knobs. There's 1 volume, 1 reverb, 1 tremolo system, and 1 tone knob. And actually, the tone knob is connected to the power switch. So if I wanted to turn this amp on, there's no flip switch. So it's actually, I just turn the tone knob and you can kind of hear a click right here, and that's how you turn it on. And when I first got this amp, I actually didn't even know how to turn this on. I was confused. I was like, where's the knob? Where's the switch? So I was looking at the back, I disassembled it, and I was like, dude, is this amp broken? Like, did they like remove the knob or whatever? And then I did some research online and I just had to turn the tone knob, and I was like, oh wow, dude, like, dude, at least like put some kind of like sign, you know, to turn the switch. But the reason why I wanted to pick this up was because it's a Gibson. You know, at the end of the day, it's a Gibson. It's made in USA. And even though Gibsons aren't really known for their amps, I mean, if it's a vintage Gibson, it has some value, you know, and I was just curious what it was like. I've never owned a Gibson amp, let alone a vintage Gibson amp. So I just decided to pick it up. Tone-wise, this amp actually sounds pretty decent. like I said, the build quality is pretty low, I'd say. It's not a well-built amp in terms of the structure, and I don't think that's the point. But I'm assuming this is like some kind of practice amp, maybe a beginner amp, maybe a beater amp that people just put in the room, plug it in, practice, because you can't gig with this amp. It just doesn't have that kind of capability. But just for playing at home on a clean channel, on a clean setting, just noodling around, it's perfectly fine for that. In fact, very good for that. But if you want to get into like, you know, distortion with crunch and, you know, gig in front of 20 plus people, this amp is not gonna cut it, to be honest with you guys. But other than that, I'd say that this is a pretty cool find. I think it's a pretty cool amplifier. You know, I only paid $100 for it. Vintage Gibson from the 60s, $100. I mean, that's a pretty good deal, I think, in my opinion. So if I had to give this amp rating, dude, build, this is probably like a 6 out of 10. And that's assuming if this was brand new condition. It's just not a durable amp. Electronically, it still works fine to this day. You know, just from the structure and the quality of the materials, it's just not high that they used. Tone, I probably give this a 7 out of 10. But like I said, it's geared more towards the practice, you know, at home, practicing alone quietly. I mean, this amp could get loud, but I don't think it's for that purpose. It's just like a basic home practice type of amp. So for that, I think it's a perfectly fine amp. Vintage 1969 Gibson GA-5 WTR mini amplifier, super light. I mean, dude, this is a joke. Can you do this with a twin reverb? I highly doubt it. But overall, I'd say this is a pretty cool find.